Good to be with you, Greg.
Thanks for being here, and thanks for talking with folks. I know people, they have a ton of questions. There's so much excitement about the merger, but there's also a ton of questions. And, I think one good way to start, you did a podcast with Ann Petros, the Credit Union Policy Podcast, and on the road you've been talking about, you have 5 pillars of this merger, and 5 pillars of what the new America's credit unions will be. And you said it on a stage yesterday, the number one pillar that is important to you is advocacy. Can you expand on that a little bit? Can you, walk people through why advocacy is such a critical pillar and why it's so critical for this new trade association?
Of course, and thank you. Thanks for doing this, and good morning, everybody. And I'll start by answering a slightly different question, because advocacy is so important that the merger is second to advocacy. In fact, we were talking about that just a second ago over breakfast, and they said, well, what's at the top of your worry list? What's at the top of your list of things to do? And I said, and I actually paused for a moment, because of course, you think about the merger, you think about all the things that people have been asking questions about, and all of those are certainly very important. I don't mean to diminish them at all, because there are things that I know you have questions about, and we'll get to those today. But job one is, even before you get to the merger, we've got to do our day job, which is exactly what you're doing this week together with all of us. We've got an important message. We've got an important juncture of time here in Washington, and we've got to put the proverbial lead on the target. We've got to be able to accomplish that between now and some pretty big bills that are coming to fruition between now and the end of the session, as you well know. And much of it is asymmetrical to what we've all known. First of all, throw out everything you heard on Saturday morning cartoons about I'm just a bill on Capitol Hill, or what you learned in your history books or your social studies books, because that isn't how a bill becomes a law these days. You're going to see it. If you woke up this morning and turned on the news, you would have heard about a potential government shutdown that might happen at the end of this month. That's now how a bill becomes a law. A bill like that gets put together, gets cobbled together because of a lot of dysfunction and disagreement, and a negotiation occurs between the administration, between both the Senate and the House, and even within a party. And then at the last minute, somebody like Dick Durbin throws something on the bill and it gets passed. And everybody thinks they have to vote for it. That's how a bill becomes a law, and that's what both NAFCU and CUNA have been working so hard together with you and with the leagues across the country to make sure we're putting as much information in the hands of not only members of Congress, but their key staffs, so that when those kinds of decisions come up and get brought to the floor, get brought to a committee, we've got the upper hand. And that's basically job one right now. And that's why advocacy, not only today, but as we think about the organization of the future, the association of the future, it's the one thing that I would argue credit unions cannot do as well by yourself as you can do together. You can do a lot of things like education. A lot of you do training and education. A lot of you do your own communications and marketing. All of those kinds of things are things that you do. You associate naturally with other credit unions. So there are things that we provide as value, but you do a lot of them on your own anyway. Advocacy, you can't do on your own as well as we all can do together. And it's part of the reason why both NAFCU and CUNA are really top-notch when it comes to advocacy in Washington these days. So that would be that's why it's so important. And the other thing I'll just tell you is that it's existential for us as chartered institutions. I mean, we've got either state charters or federal charters, and so we're beholden to the government and to our share insurance fund and the regulations that manage financial services. And so it's existential that we're completely immersed in the advocacy, regulatory, and now legal advocacy arenas on a constant basis.
Absolutely, that is so true. I think that's a really good summation, but kind of digging into one little point you made there. You talked about CUNA and NAFCU are up there. CUNA and NAFCU are great in advocacy. And that brings me to a question I've had people bring to me, and I know you've heard it as well. Several people have wondered, isn't it better to have 2 trade associations up there lobbying on behalf of credit unions than one? So if we merge, are we taking a voice off the table? How do you respond to that question?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's not lost on me that competition has sharpened our saws, right? There's no question about it that the fire, if you will, of having to stand in front of members and compete on our value propositions. Dan and I have done that, and historically that's been done. It definitely has a saw sharpening, say that 3 times fast, a saw sharpening aspect to it. I won't discount that. Having said that, though, that may have been probably more true for 20,000 credit unions than it is today. Sadly, we're down below 5,000 and heading even further south when it comes to, because of consolidation, some of it very natural, some of it because of the regulatory challenges and costs that are out there that make it difficult to compete. So for us, and the boards, as they came together talking about this, that was really the first question that they had to wrestle. Is it better? And they made the determination that the ability to amass our precious resources, and they are precious, because we're not for profit as not only an industry but individual institutions. These member dollars are precious, and so you want to make sure that they are stewarded as effectively and efficiently as possible toward their main goal of advocacy, number one. And second, because we do often have a slight difference in the message that we take to Capitol Hill between our associations. Now, I'll admit, I'm sure you have a perspective, Dan probably has this too, that once in a while, some of those differences in messages were manufactured as a way to show you all as members either how tough we were or how just a little bit distinct we were as an association. Again, part of that competition. So that's where competition, I don't think, helped us much, because we would walk into an office either from NAFCU or from CUNA. The other association might have been in there just the day before or the hour before, and we would get from staff or from the member themselves saying, hey, how come you're saying something a little bit different than the last folks that were from credit unions? So having a united message, I think, is important, or as important as making sure that we're amassing precious resources toward the advocacy goal.
A unified voice is absolutely very important, and it's very powerful. Yeah. It's incredibly powerful to have that unified voice. Now, you have just a little bit of public policy experience, as I rather ineloquently tried to say up there. You were a member of Congress.
Has-been. That's all that means. Is all that list is I've done a lot of things, can't hold a job. So,
but those things you've done, chairman of the House Budget Committee, director of OMB, it gives you a real grounding and basis when we talk about advocacy. You've done it. You've lived that advocacy. So, given your experience both in politics and now a while at CUNA, we're going to be shaping, if this merger happens, a policy focus for America's credit unions. What is your vision for what government advocacy will look like, government affairs will look like at America's credit union, and also advocacy for credit unions generally post-merger? What would that look like in your eyes?
I would say there are some main parts to this that are probably, no matter what organization you form, they will be universal, and they will transcend any leader or any association. And credit unions, I've come to learn on both sides of the table, having received credit union advocacy from you all and the folks from my state of Iowa, and having actually been turned. Some of you maybe have heard me tell this story, but when I was elected, I was not a credit union candidate or congressman. The bankers had gotten into me when I first ran. And the very first phone call, but this is meant as an example that I want you to take to heart. The very first phone call I got when I announced my candidacy for Congress was from my buddy, the local banker, saying, how can I help you? Never heard word one, and this is I'm just talking to you as family members now, didn't hear word one for quite some time from the credit unions. And as a result, that's what I knew. I didn't have a credit union in my town at that point in time. I knew the banker formed a relationship. This is about relationship building. You all know that. So it took some time, actually took all the way to 1151 to turn me. So I supported it, co-sponsorship, all of those kinds of things. But my point is this, it's a relationship business, and that's the first pillar. It's got to start with you. You can hire all the association folks, you can you know, we used to call them the guys in ties on Capitol Hill. I mean, that doesn't matter if you're not forming the relationship with those members of Congress, those senators, those policymakers at the local level, inviting them to your credit union, asking them to, frankly, to do a fundraiser. Can I do a fundraiser for you? Can I do what that banker said to me? I'll gather some of my friends together and we'll have a conversation about the issues. Simple things like that build muscle memory and relationship memory for the time you need them down the road. So that's first and foremost is the grassroots. Obviously, you need a cadre of professional folks who can help organize and help ensure that the strategy is heading in the right direction, have their ears to the ground and have their feet on Capitol Hill on a regular basis or in the regulators to be able to hear what's going on and be able to make sure you're providing them good information on the issues or just understand and sound them out on where they're heading next. So that kind of relationship combination is very important. And then don't forget politics. Part of the reason why you had a great event, sounded like last night, for your PAC. We obviously have a great PAC. And so being able to support candidates as they're coming up into the ranks and saying, thank you, we support you because you support credit unions is really important to help close the circle. And then last is communications has become, and this isn't breaking any kind of, some kind of new strategy. Communications, particularly with the general public and with your members, is becoming the X factor that you're seeing play out right now in the interchange battle as an example, or the big box bailout, as we like to call it. And that is merchants are showing how they are able to engage their membership in this battle. And as much as we have done, we're still slightly behind when it comes to the small businesses that are energized on this issue. Our secret is we have to figure out, and it's what both NAFCU and CUNA have been doing, how we can get you all to engage your membership in understanding why this is important, not just to the credit union, but more especially to them when it comes to their data security or when it comes to their cost of consuming and things like that. So that's kind of that X factor, is that communications and how we engage the general